Hello, everyone. I've got a great story today that is set in Rome, in the Vatican City. Now, the majesty of St. Peter's Basilica and the Sistine Chapel always leaves visitors in awe. The Catholic Church itself is seen by many as either an organization of faith and devotion for their many followers or corruption and power by most everybody else. Vatican City is the headquarters of the Catholic Church and also the residence of the Pope, who is the leader of the Church. The headquarters to an organization that is viewed by many with suspicion and even disgust in recent years. There is a whole population of people that work in Vatican City and just call it home. Emanuela Orlandi's father, Ercola Orlandi, worked in the Institute, I'm going to try to pronounce it and mangle it, but it's really the Vatican Bank. It's called the Istituto per le Opere di Religione. Okay, I'm not going to do that again. The Orlandi family lived inside this mysterious city, and on June 22nd, 1983, 15-year-old Emanuela disappeared while she was on her way home from a music lesson. Much like the story of Madeleine McCann, there have been sightings of her all over the world since that day, yet none of them have been confirmed, and the case still remains unsolved. Her brother is Pietro, and he has been looking for her for 36 years and has created a documentary to help keep her name in the public eye. A Huffington Post Italy article stated, her name was linked to the attack on Pope John Paul II in 1981, the collapse of the Soviet Union, the mysteries of the Vatican Bank, and the Magliano Band. Now, the Magliano Band is a crime syndicate in Rome that participates in normal criminal activity, racketeering, murder, drugs, loan sharking. And here's what we know about that day in 1983. It was a hot, muggy day in Rome, and school had just let out for all of the students for summer the day before. Emanuela was on her way to a music lesson at the complex of Sant'Apollinare. She took a bus, got off, and walked about approximately 700 feet to class. She was late that day, and she called her sister and told her that a person approached her about selling Avon products. Her sister told her to discuss it with their parents first before she did anything. After the lesson, she spoke to a friend about the offer and went to the bus with another friend. She was seen last getting into a dark-colored BMW. On June 23rd, the very next day, her parents contacted the director of the music class to see if there might be some additional information, as Emanuela had not come home that night. Based on what they learned, they immediately filed a missing person report that same day. The police took it in stride, said she might be with some friends, or that perhaps it was an escape of love, that she ran away with somebody. There were all kinds of phone calls that came in immediately once it was aired, saying they'd seen her. On June 25th, a man by the name of Pierluigi reported that he and his fiancée met Emanuela at the Piazza Novana in the afternoon. He talked about her flute, her hair and glasses, which she hated, and he gave many details that made him sound credible. He said that she had told him that she ran away and was going to sell Avon products. 3 days later, on the 28th, a man named Mario called the family and said he owned a bar near Ponte Vittorio, somewhere between the Vatican and the music school. He said a girl named Barbara, who was new to him, told him that she had run away and was selling Avon. Neither of these leads could be verified or turned into anything. Days later, there was a direct message from the Pope. Pietro relates the story like this. there was even an appeal from the Pope, an appeal that caught us unprepared, commented Pietro. An appeal that showed that the Pope was aware of something that we did not know, an appeal that spoke of being responsible, and that therefore Emanuela had been kidnapped. Since the Pope didn't idly speak, it was believed that he was sending a message. Within 2 weeks of her disappearance, kidnappers called and asked for an exchange of the bomber Mohammed Ali Agha for Emanuela. Agha belonged to a group called the Grey Wolves. They were a Turkish far-right nationalist organization. Many of people called them terrorists. They were the masterminds behind an assassination attempt on Pope John Paul II in 1981. I believe that is why he addressed the missing Emanuela Orlandi days before they made their demands. On July 6, 1983, a man with a young American accent demanded an Orlandi Agha trade, asking the Pope to participate. They said they would provide proof that they had Orlandi, like her school ID, a receipt, and a handwritten note from the girl. On July 8th, there was contact made once again. This time, a man with a Middle Eastern accent phoned one of Emanuela's classmates, saying for the second time that they had 20 days to make an exchange with Orlandi for Agha. They wanted a direct line to the Vatican, so one was installed. In total, there were 16 calls that were received, but nothing ever came of it. On May 14th, 2001, a parish priest of Gregory VII Church near the Vatican discovered a smallish human skull without a jawbone in a bag with an image of Padre Pio on it in a confessional. It has not been identified as Emanuela's skull. Finally, in 2004, her father gave his last interview and passed away. Her brother Pietro and 2 sisters, Natalina and Frederica, participated on a documentary and are still holding out hope. Just this week, the Vatican is giving permission for a search to be done to see if her remains are lodged in a Teutonic cemetery. There is so much more to this story, which I'm going to get into now. Christmas 1983, Pope Wojciech, Pope John Paul II, went personally to visit the Orlandi family. Now that's a distinct honor for any pope to visit an ordinary family. He was showing his solidarity and saying he would get to the truth. It was a magnanimous gesture, though let's remember, the Vatican City in total is 109 acres with 1,000 residents, and that's today. So literally, he was going across town to visit a family that not only worked at but supported the Vatican. A part of the gesture was that Pope gave her brother Pietro a job at the Vatican Bank, which, of course, Pietro gladly accepted and worked there for many years. It was while working there that Pietro became aware of the other truth regarding the papacy, the Mafia, and his sister. 22 years after her disappearance, when the case had long gone cold, a call was made during a broadcast of a show called Chi l'ha visto. Roughly, it translates into Who Has Seen. After the broadcast, her case was immediately reopened by authorities. Now, the caller said that one of the original founders of the Bag of Magliano, which is the criminal organization, Enrico De Pettis, was gunned down in the street in 1990. De Pettis was buried at Sant'Apollinare, a place reserved for the burials of princes, kings, great artists, great people in general. The caller that called into the show wanted to know how this could happen. How could a criminal be buried at a place reserved for great people? The reason was money. Archbishop Paulette wanted the burial there because De Pettis had made many large donations to the church. He also deposited a large sum of money at the Vatican Bank and then disappeared. The connection to Emanuela? One of the last times she was seen, a person named Sabina Menardi was said to accompany Emanuela to a specific point and then turned her over to a man wearing a religious habit in a dark car. There was a break in the case in 2008 when a mistress of Enrico de Pettis told the authorities that de Pettis organized the abduction at the request of Paul Marcinkus, an American archbishop who was the former president of the Vatican Bank. Marcinkus died in 2006. Emanuela had been speaking to a man in a dark BMW, and the description by the people who were around was similar to de Pettis. Many believe that Emanuela's father had evidence of the corruption by Marcinkus, and the kidnapping was to keep that clerk quiet. Later, a banker named Roberto Calvi came forward with a letter to the Pope, telling him that the money de Pettis deposited at the Vatican Bank was used to finance a Polish trade union called Solidarność. Shortly after Calvi's body was found, it was hanging in London. He was dead. The corruption of the Vatican and the bankers is one reason it was suggested that Emanuela Orlandi disappeared and that she was actually murdered. A journalist by the name of Pino Nicotri revealed a theory as he was writing a book that states Orlandi was a victim of a sexual orgy organized by priests. He also suggested that the priests were the ones phoning in all the tips to distract the investigation. Another theory was that a document was stolen from the Vatican, and that document revealed the Vatican knew where the teen was and had been paying her expenses for years. Now, the Vatican called that document and that accusation false and ridiculous. Last year, workers were renovating an annex of the Vatican's embassy to Italy and discovered bones underneath the floor. Immediately, the most famous cold case in Italy came to mind for the authorities. Since 1983, Italy has been obsessed with the disappearance of Emanuela Orlandi. In 2017, there were tips that she was murdered and buried in the Teutonic Cemetery, which is a resting place for those of German origin. The directions Pietro Orlandi was given via the tips led him to the tomb of Princess Sophia of Hohenlohe, who died in the 18th century. The Vatican has given permission that today, this Thursday, July 12th, 2019, that the tomb of the princess will be opened in a further search for the missing girl. For more than 36 years, Italians have been obsessed with the disappearance of Emanuela Orlandi, the 15-year-old daughter of a Vatican employee that went missing after going to a music lesson. Is this another goose chase, or could we really know what happened to Emanuela Orlandi? I know her family wants to know, and Pietro and her sisters hope that she is still out there alive somewhere. Again, thank you for listening. There are citations of reference below. And if you like this post, please hit the subscribe button and the little bell for notifications, and it'll tell you when I put another video up. And again, thank you for listening.